40,000 years ago, Earth was a completely different world. Massive glaciers covered much of Europe, temperatures were freezing, food was scarce, and survival was a daily battle. But modern humans weren't alone. Another intelligent human species walked across these frozen lands. They hunted giant mammoths with wooden spears, mastered fire, built stone tools, and cared for their families just like we do today. Their name was the Neanderthals. For more than 300,000 years, they survived one of the harshest environments on Earth. They were powerful, intelligent, and perfectly adapted to the Ice Age. Yet despite all their strength and intelligence, something unimaginable happened. Around 40,000 years ago, they disappeared forever. But why? What force was powerful enough to wipe out one of humanity's closest relatives? Was it climate change, deadly diseases, violent conflict, or did they simply become part of us? Today, we're uncovering one of the greatest mysteries in human history and stand face to face with a Neanderthal. The first thing you would notice is that they didn't look like monsters. They looked surprisingly human. They had strong, muscular bodies, broad shoulders, powerful arms, and a larger skull than modern humans. In fact, their average brain was slightly larger than ours. They weren't primitive beasts wandering blindly through the wilderness. Archaeological discoveries reveal that Neanderthals made sophisticated stone tools, controlled fire, built shelters from wood and animal bones, and even created clothing from animal skins to survive freezing temperatures. Perhaps even more surprising, they cared for one another. Scientists have discovered skeletons of injured Neanderthals who lived for many years after serious injuries. That means someone hunted for them, protected them, and shared food with them. They had compassion, family bonds, and a society far more advanced than most people imagine. So if they were intelligent, skilled, and perfectly adapted to the Ice Age, what went wrong? For nearly 250,000 years, Neanderthals ruled the frozen landscapes of Europe and Western Asia without any serious rivals. They had adapted to the brutal Ice Age so well that they became the dominant human species across the region. But everything changed around 60,000 years ago when a new kind of human began moving out of Africa. These newcomers were Homo Sapiens, our direct ancestors. At first, they were few in number. They entered lands that had belonged to the Neanderthals for hundreds of thousands of years. Imagine seeing another human species for the very first time. They looked different, they spoke differently, they hunted differently. Neither side knew what to expect. Were they enemies or potential allies? Did they fight over food and territory, or did they trade knowledge and live side by side? Scientists still debate exactly what happened during these first encounters, but one thing is certain. From the moment these two human species met, history changed forever.
For many years, scientists believed the answer was simple. They thought Homo sapiens arrived in Europe, fought the Neanderthals, and eventually drove them to extinction. It sounded like the perfect survival story, one human species replacing another. But as archaeologists uncovered more evidence, that explanation began to fall apart. There were no signs of a massive war, no giant battlefields, no evidence of a continent-wide massacre. Instead, researchers found something far more complicated. In some places, Neanderthals and Homo sapiens lived in the same regions for thousands of years. They weren't separated by centuries, they were neighbors. If they lived side by side for so long, then why did only one species survive? The answer may not have been war at all. It may have been something much slower and far more devastating.
One of the strongest theories points to something that Neanderthals could never control: the climate. Around 45,000 to 40,000 years ago, the Earth entered a period of rapid and unpredictable climate change. Temperatures rose and fell dramatically within just a few generations. Dense forests that had once provided shelter slowly disappeared, replaced by vast open grasslands. Rivers changed their course, and familiar hunting grounds became empty. The giant animals that Neanderthals depended on, woolly mammoths, giant deer, and wild bison, began migrating to new regions in search of food. Every successful hunt became more difficult than the last. Families had to travel farther, survive longer winters, and compete for fewer resources. For a species already living in small, isolated groups, these environmental changes may have pushed them to the edge of survival. But climate alone doesn't explain everything, because Homo sapiens faced the same frozen world, and they survived. Another theory is even more disturbing. What if Neanderthals weren't defeated by weapons, but by invisible enemies, diseases? When Homo sapiens migrated out of Africa, they didn't just bring new tools and new ideas. Like every human population throughout history, they also carried bacteria and viruses. These germs may have been harmless to Homo sapiens, who had developed immunity over thousands of years. But for isolated Neanderthal populations, the situation could have been completely different. Imagine two human species meeting for the very first time after evolving separately for hundreds of thousands of years. Even a simple infection, something as ordinary as a respiratory illness or skin disease, could have spread through small Neanderthal groups with devastating consequences. Scientists don't have direct proof that disease caused their extinction, but many researchers believe disease, combined with climate change and competition, may have weakened Neanderthal populations until they could no longer recover. Sometimes, history isn't changed by the strongest warrior. Sometimes it's changed by something too small to be seen.
Neanderthals had vanished without leaving a trace. Their bones lay buried beneath caves and ancient soil, silent witnesses to a forgotten past. But in the early 21st century, a breakthrough in genetic science changed everything. Researchers extracted tiny fragments of DNA from Neanderthal fossils that were over 40,000 years old. It was an incredibly difficult process. The DNA was damaged, contaminated, and broken into millions of tiny pieces. Yet, after years of research, scientists finally reconstructed part of the Neanderthal genome. What they discovered shocked the world. Neanderthals hadn't disappeared completely. Instead, they had left part of themselves inside us. Their story wasn't over. It was written into the DNA of billions of people alive today. When scientists compared ancient Neanderthal DNA with the DNA of modern people, they found something extraordinary. If your ancestors came from Europe, Asia, or the Middle East, there's a good chance you carry between 1% and 2% Neanderthal DNA. That may sound tiny, but it means billions of people alive today are still carrying a genetic connection to a human species that disappeared 40,000 years ago.
But these aren't just meaningless fragments of ancient DNA. Some Neanderthal genes still influence our bodies today. Researchers have linked them to parts of our immune system, the way our skin and hair adapt to different climates, and even how some people respond to certain illnesses. In other words, every time your body fights an infection, a tiny piece of Neanderthal history may be helping you survive. The Neanderthals may have disappeared as a separate species, but in a way, they never truly left us. If Neanderthals and Homo sapiens lived in the same regions for thousands of years, one question becomes impossible to ignore. Were they peaceful neighbors or fierce competitors? Both species hunted many of the same animals. Both needed fresh water, shelter, firewood, and safe places to raise their children. During the harsh ice age, these resources were limited. Every successful hunt could mean the difference between life and death. It's easy to imagine that competition was inevitable. Some archaeologists believe there were occasional conflicts between the two species, but surprisingly, there is no clear evidence of a massive war. Instead, the evidence suggests something more complex. Sometimes they may have competed, sometimes they may have avoided each other, and sometimes they may have cooperated. The relationship between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens wasn't simply about enemies or friends. It was a complicated story of survival in one of the harshest environments our planet has ever known. For a long time, scientists believed that Neanderthals had simply vanished from Earth. Their story seemed to end in silence. But in 2010, everything changed. An international team of geneticists successfully decoded much of the Neanderthal genome, allowing them to compare it with the DNA of modern humans. What they found was completely unexpected. People whose ancestors came from Europe and Asia shared small but unmistakable pieces of Neanderthal DNA. This could only mean one thing. Homo sapiens and Neanderthals didn't just meet, they had children together. Instead of disappearing overnight, many Neanderthals were slowly absorbed into growing Homo sapiens populations. Their bloodlines continued, hidden inside future generations. In other words, the Neanderthals never truly disappeared. A small part of them is still alive today, inside millions and even billions of people around the world. But if Neanderthals became part of modern humans, why did they disappear as a separate species? The answer may lie in something far more powerful than strength or intelligence. It was population. By the time Homo sapiens spread across Europe, their communities were growing larger and more connected. They traded tools across long distances, shared hunting strategies, and formed strong social networks. If one group faced hunger, another group could help. Knowledge spread quickly, and every generation learned from the last. Neanderthals lived differently. Their groups were much smaller and often isolated from one another. If disease struck, if a harsh winter arrived, or if hunters failed to find food, there were very few people left to help them recover. Generation after generation, their numbers slowly declined. It wasn't one single disaster that ended them. It was hundreds of small challenges that slowly became impossible to overcome. Imagine standing somewhere in Europe nearly 40,000 years ago. The world feels colder than ever before. Thick glaciers stretch across the landscape. Icy winds roar through empty valleys, and the forests that once echoed with the sounds of Neanderthal hunters have fallen silent. For hundreds of thousands of years, these lands belonged to them. They knew every river, every mountain, and every animal that wandered across the frozen plains. They had survived brutal winters, powerful predators, and dramatic climate changes. Generation after generation, they adapted to a world that few other humans could survive. But now, everything is different. Their hunting grounds are disappearing. Food has become scarce. Small groups are scattered across vast distances, making it harder to find help when disaster strikes. Every failed hunt means another family goes hungry. Every harsh winter claims more lives. Children grow up in a world where the voices of neighboring tribes are becoming quieter with each passing year. Somewhere inside a lonely cave, one of the last Neanderthal families gathers around a fading fire. They have no idea that they are For centuries, the story of the Neanderthals was told as a story of failure. They were often described as primitive creatures who simply couldn't compete with modern humans. But today's science tells a very different story. The Neanderthals were not failures, they were survivors. They lived across Europe and Western Asia for more than 300,000 years, far longer than Homo sapiens have existed in many parts of the world today. They survived brutal ice ages, hunted massive animals with incredible skill, cared for the sick, buried their dead, and adapted to environments that would challenge even modern humans. Their disappearance was not the result of a single battle or one catastrophic event. Instead, it was the result of countless challenges happening over thousands of years. Climate change, shrinking populations, limited resources, possible diseases, and competition with Homo sapiens all combined to create a future they could no longer escape. But even then, they didn't truly disappear. Through interbreeding with our ancestors, they became part of us. Today, every person carrying Neanderthal DNA is living proof that their story never completely ended. So the next time you look into a mirror, remember this incredible fact. A tiny piece of one of humanity's closest relatives may still be looking back at you. The Neanderthals may be gone as a species, but their legacy continues to live inside us, reminding us that human history is far more connected than we ever imagined. The story of the Neanderthals isn't just about a species that disappeared, it's also a story about us. Every fossil discovered, every ancient cave explored, and every fragment of DNA analyzed brings us one step closer to understanding our own origins. The questions scientists ask about Neanderthals are, in many ways, questions about ourselves. How did humans survive impossible challenges? What made one population succeed while another slowly faded away? And what can their story teach us about the future of our own species? History often remembers the winners, but the Neanderthals remind us that survival is rarely simple. They were intelligent, creative, and remarkably resilient. For more than 300,000 years, they endured extreme climates, hunted dangerous animals, and built lives in a world that demanded extraordinary strength. Their disappearance was not a sign of weakness, it was the result of a complex chain of events that scientists are still trying to fully understand today. In many ways, the Neanderthals never truly left this world. Their DNA survives in millions of people. Their tools still lie buried beneath ancient soil. Their caves continue to reveal new secrets, and with every new discovery, the line separating them from us becomes a little more difficult to see. 40,000 years ago, the last Neanderthal took their final breath. Their campfires slowly faded into darkness, their voices disappeared from the valleys of Europe, and their footprints were buried beneath layers of snow and time. To the world, it looked as though they had vanished forever. But history had a different plan. Thousands of years later, scientists uncovered their bones, decoded their DNA, and revealed a truth that no one had expected. The Neanderthals were never completely erased from history. A part of them survived, not in ancient caves or forgotten ruins, but inside us. Every discovery reminds us that human evolution wasn't a straight line. It was a long, complicated journey shaped by survival, adaptation, cooperation, and change. The story of the Neanderthals teaches us something extraordinary. Intelligence alone doesn't guarantee survival. Strength alone doesn't decide the future. Sometimes the smallest changes, climate, population, disease, or the ability to work together, can change the course of history forever. So the next time you look into a mirror, remember this: you're not just looking at a modern human, you're looking at the result of hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, carrying the legacy of those who came before us. And perhaps, hidden deep within your DNA, a small part of a Neanderthal is still looking back. The greatest mystery isn't why the Neanderthals disappeared. The greatest mystery is how much of them still lives inside us.